Hello, and welcome to the Servant Leadership Podcast. My name is Sam Shinta, and I'm joined by Rick Kite. Each episode, we talk with leaders in a variety of fields about character, the common good, and the importance of civic virtue. Hi, Rick. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Sam. It's a great day to talk about leadership and virtue.
Oh, I agree. Every day is a good day to talk about leadership and virtue. And there's something extra special about today. Today is our 1-year anniversary. It was a year ago that we started this podcast. And so here we are with a wonderful guest to help celebrate that year. And like most 1-year-olds, I like to think that we still make a mess occasionally, but we're walking a little bit better and more upright every episode.
And falling down occasionally.
And falling down occasionally. Well, our guest today is Jervie Windom. Born in Brooklyn, Jervie Windom honorably served 24 years in the United States Army. Jervie is an alumnus of Southern Wesleyan University, Villanova University, and Viterbo University, with over 19 years of ministry experience. Jervie is married to Nilda Windom, a native of Neptune, New Jersey. Nilda is a United States Army veteran as well, with 16 years of honorable service. After the destruction caused by Hurricane Harvey in August of 2017, the Windoms returned home to Galveston County, Texas, to assist with long-term recovery efforts for the people of the greater Houston area to provide healing, help, and hope. They formed a partnership between their local church in La Plata, Maryland, the Sent Church in Plano, Texas, and the Mountain Plains District of the Wesleyan Church. From this partnership, Resonate Church emerged. Resonate Church is currently partnering with local and national organizations to rebuild homes, provide jobs, and revitalize communities. Welcome, Jervie Windom. It's an honor to have you here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So in 2017, your wife and you decide, hey, let's start a church to deal with all of these issues. Seems to me to be a pretty monumental task and a big commitment to service in a community. What did that involve? And what brought you to that decision?
Well, actually, in 2017, I was more of let's not start a church because I had, been a part of church plants before. It's very hard, very difficult life. And I was retiring from the military and I kind of wanted to retire or at least do something close to it. At least that was my thinking until Hurricane Harvey hit and we were able to come down and do recovery. My military unit allowed me to come down and check on my home and plug into the recovery efforts that were happening in our region.
Excellent. And so why Galveston County?
Well, we had no family from there or anything. We're not from there. But my wife and I, when we traveled to Galveston, we were visiting various places on vacation and also times when I had temporary duty because I was still active duty military. When I traveled to various places, I just prayed and was wondering, where did God want us to land? And so we happened to visit there together. And I'm telling you, we stood in Galveston and looked at one another. And at the same time, we were like, this is home. We just felt like this is home. And having not had a home in my entire adult life because of being in the military and moving 14 times, that really meant something to me, that my wife and I both somehow felt like this was it. And that has just been affirmed every day since we've moved here. We love where we live and we love the people of Galveston County.
And so both of you had extensive service in the military prior to this. How did that experience inform building this new church?
Well, having spent time in the military, Houston is one of the most ethnically diverse cities in the United States. And so our church is very diverse. Being in the military really prepared us for that. We just love all types of of people. We're excited about diversity. We get excited about all of this kind of stuff. So we find ourselves doing a lot of, cool things that we never thought we'd do. Last year I skinned a deer. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like, so being from New York and New Jersey is just really cool to just be in another culture and a place where there's so much diversity and so much to embrace and so much to learn from. It's just been exciting. So we wake up every day not feeling like we have to do this. We feel like we get to do this. So it's pretty exciting.
That's wonderful. And I love that idea that diversity of both experiences of peoples kind of informed your past and present and future, right? So as you're looking ahead.
Yes.
I'm assuming the community embraced this new church based on the success that you've had down there.
Well, yes. I mean, the community has, embraced us, but I mean, not without challenges. I mean, we've had several challenges, everything from people coming in the church. I remember I think we were maybe on our second pre-launch service, and we had someone come in and literally use the M word repeatedly while he was talking to me. Matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, I was visiting a friend of mine's church, and after church, there was I won't get into it, but an ethnic insult, that came from someone actually there at the church. So, I mean, we have these things happen, but we lean into these things because we just believe that, we have to be the most hopeful. I mean, we've seen God just work so much in our communities. And so we allow these particular challenges just to, challenge us to know that we need to lean into what we're doing all the more. We need to have, those difficult conversations, which in our church we do have those conversations. And we need to pray and just be hopeful for our community. I mean, we don't want anyone to get so burdened by the challenges that we have that we overlook the fact that those challenges actually provide opportunities for us to experience, God's best.
You and I were chatting a little bit before we started here, and you mentioned that you were involved in a conference this week with a bunch of regional churches, and then in a few weeks you'll be getting together with a bunch of national churches, all of them, serving the community in very, very dynamic and rich ways. And I made the point of, to me, this shows a very vibrant and dynamic civil society in existence, right? This whole idea that we have these institutions that are operating to serve their communities. Where do you see your role as a church there in the Galveston area? How do you see what do you see your function being?
Well, we always say at Resonate, this is something that we say all the time. Actually, every day we do a little thing called Coffee with the Pastor, and we remind everyone to stay inspired. And so we really do want to be catalysts for hope, in our region, and so basically, like I said, when any of the challenges that we have in our region, we want people to see these things as opportunities and not see problems as problems. Problems are opportunities for us to come together. Problems are opportunities for us to experience God's best. Problems are the opportunities also for us to see and experience one another's best. I mean, Hurricane Harvey has shown that. I can tell you so many phenomenal stories of people coming together. Some of the worst things that have faced this region have produced some of the greatest stories. And we've experienced some of the most wonderful things. Just out of those particular challenges. And, so that's what we see as our role. I can tell you so many stories just coming out of using Hurricane Harvey, for example, or some of the other storms. I mean, beautiful expressions of love and hope that have emerged out of those terrible, challenging trials. And so we want to remind people of that. We believe that that's our primary role, is to be catalysts of hope.
Jervie, it's so fascinating. You're talking about how the challenges that people are facing in your community in response to Hurricane Harvey. have brought everybody together. And yet we're facing a number of challenges here as a nation, and the challenges seem to be driving us apart, in some ways contrary to everybody's expectations. Are you seeing a conflict between what's going on locally and what's taking place nationally with kind of divisions we're facing?
I mean, we have a lot of those things here, of course, being Texas.
Yeah.
There's lots of things, and I can tell stories about that. I mean, like I said, just the insult that I received just a couple of weeks ago, literally on the church, on my friend's, church grounds there. But I look at all of that as just an opportunity. I really wish we would, grab a hold of the miracle in the moment. When we see these problems, when these problems arise, that we allow these problems to guide us, actually, instead of, fixating ourselves on, the irritation of the problem, embracing the truth of the moment as it's revealed in that challenge. And then saying, okay, so now that this opportunity has presented itself, asking God, what is your plan in this? Asking God, how do you want me to respond in a way that brings glory to you and that honors your creation? God, how can I be on mission with you in the midst of this challenge? That's what we want people to be reminded to ask themselves during these times.
That sounds really great. And we know this, and in fact, I've talked with you about this before, about this. This is what servant leaders do, is they redirect people's attention towards the greater good and to a higher level of purpose than just self-interest. And it seems in some ways pretty obvious, pretty elementary, like this is what you do, and yet very few people do it.
Yeah.
How do you keep your focus? How do you keep focused on the greater good? How do you not let the challenges and the disagreements and things, how do you keep from getting involved in those entanglements yourself?
Well, I think sometimes I believe we're heavily involved in some of those things. There have been challenges in our church this year. We have, some people that are very blue. We have some people that are very red. Our church is very diverse, and we embrace that. But, I think even in our nation, we need to have very real conversations and allow people to be honest about how they feel and what they're thinking, and respect them and be good listeners. I think that's where everything kind of breaks down, because I don't know if we really listen well. I think a lot of times we feel like if a person's saying something and I don't agree with them, then, I can tune them out and that's okay because I know that I'm right and they're wrong. But the truth is that it really isn't about being right or wrong as much as it is about doing the right thing, and doing the right thing. Listening is always the right thing. And it doesn't matter if that person is right or wrong, because what truly matters in the midst of a conversation is relationship. The opinions don't matter because the opinions can change. The relationship is the most important part of any conversation. And if we lose the relationship, then nothing else really matters.
How do you, as Rick notes, it's a rather fraught time in our culture generally. How do you do that in say, you mentioned the two instances over the past couple of years where someone comes in very racially charged, right? That this whole point that they want to devalue you in a sense as a human being. How do you then open your heart to someone like that and actually try to bridge that divide?
Well, it's looking at it as an opportunity. If it's an opportunity, that imagine, and I can tell you, it's been more times than that, actually. Those are just two times that I'm sharing with you. But it's been more times than that. But I have some pretty cool stories about how things have been turned around. There's some people that I have coffee with on a regular basis, in our city, that when the first time I met one particular gentleman, he wouldn't even shake my hand. And, now we have coffee together. So you don't get those cool stories without, the emergence of those those problems. Those problems are opportunities. And if we see them as that and we lean into that and we truly believe what it is that we're preaching, what it is that we're sharing with our kids, a lot of times we're saying things, even to our kids. And I mean, but do we really believe that? What shows that we believe it is not when it's easy. What shows that we believe it is when it's hard, when it seems impossible. And you're going to listen to that person and you're going to show them respect. And you're going to continue to lean into, how can I build a relationship with this person, despite whether or not we agree or disagree, because the relationship matters. How can I do that? And that becomes something that you think about, that you take home with you every day, that you pray about, that you wrestle with, because that person matters. If you really, really believe that, then that's the only way to get those incredible stories. It's very easy to just say, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with that person. I don't like what they're saying, whatever. And you shut them off and you shut them out. And the truth is that they're still a member of your community. So you have done a disservice to yourself, because that person could one day be a great friend. You've done a disservice to your community, because there's things that you guys probably can accomplish together. You've done there's just, on so many levels, that relationship is now missing. And it could be needed. But because you don't value it, then you miss what God could be trying to teach both of you in the moment. And I'm saying both of you, that's actually an understatement. It's what God could be attempting to teach all of us. Because those relationships don't just have value to the people that are in them. They have also value to the people that are watching them.
That is that is really well said, and I love what you're talking about. I love this whole idea of the modeling aspect of this as well. That if we want to be, if we want better citizens, we have to be good citizens, so that other people see what good citizenship looks like.
Absolutely.
And so you mentioned some of these stories, and I know your efforts are not constrained to just the preaching in the church, that you are the person who rolls up his sleeves and gets out in the community. So rebuilding after storms. I know you were doing some work with young men, in particular in the prison system, that have been incarcerated. How are those efforts, do you think, transforming the underlying community? Think, for example, of this, that working with the young men who are incarcerated. What are you seeing there?
Well, we always say that every human heart matters to God. And so, our mission is inspiring communities to love Jesus one heart at a time. We focus very heavily on the one heart at a time. And so we believe, that's what we think about, it's what we talk about every single day. So when we go into Atwater Detention Center and other places, we really focus on the individual person. And so it's not like we're going in saying, like, how can we fix this system or the structure? That's a conversation for another day, right? But what's right in front of you is the opportunity to add value and to inspire and to be a catalyst of hope for that one individual human heart that matters so much to God. And so we have so many stories of, people basically just, their lives changing. Like one young man, I was at a gas station, and this young man, he's from a very rough neighborhood in Texas City, runs up to me and just gives me a hug. And it was really cool because, I knew the kid, but I never, I didn't think we had that kind of relationship. But it was just the fact that he was telling me that he, finally has like a real job. And, he was just telling me about his hopes and dreams of, one day going to college and, all of this. And if you had known, this young man, when I first met him, every other word was a cuss word. He didn't feel he mattered. Matter of fact, that's one of the things that he told me. He said, nobody cares about me. Nobody cares about what I'm going through. And I was able to spend, a lot of time with him. And I didn't have any magic words. I couldn't, fix his situation, but just being present and listening to him and letting him know that he does matter, and letting him know that, that the potential that lives inside of him, and that there is a community that cares about you. I mean, that it resonated with him eventually, over time. And so we have to invest in relationships. They don't come overnight, and people don't just trust you just because you show up. People, you gain trust because you keep showing up. We have to learn how to keep showing up for one another.
How important is it that you are a man who is showing up in the lives of these young men, like the man who embraced you at the gas station? And I'm asking that because we oftentimes think, well, young men who are incarcerated, they've had difficulty, hard upbringings and so forth. But I'm finding it with college students that I'm teaching also, when, for example, I talk to them about like who are both the men and the women in their lives who've been really influential. Most of the young people I'm encountering today have a hard time naming men who were responsible and influential in their lives growing up. It's like it's become a national crisis.
I totally agree with what you're saying, and I connect deeply with that. A lot of the young men and young women that we deal with on a regular basis, there is no one showing up for them. Absolutely no one. And a lot of people that do show up, they show up for one time, they show up for a photo op, they show up to say they showed up. But when it gets messy, and it does, and it will, they don't continue to show up. And that's the thing that's missing. We got to be willing to get messy. It's not. That's what's needed. It's what's so necessary. In our communities, it's kind of like, we have to see the value of every single relationship, and we have to believe in the value of every human being. And if we stop believing in that, or if we kind of say we do, and then as soon as we're challenged, we just kind of back out or we leave it alone, then there are repercussions for that. There's things that happen in people's lives that are going to affect and impact all of us if we don't get invested. And that's, I think, another conversation that we need to have about our community. It's just like when we talk recidivism, here at Atwater Detention Center, recidivism rate is over 90%, right? So that means that if you're a kid and you get in trouble in our community, chances are you're going to stay in trouble. Well, eventually you're going to time out, and you'll no longer be able to go to the juvenile detention center. You'll end up in prison. So if we look at from a monetary perspective, how all of that impacts all of us. Well, not just that, right? This is the monetary piece. Some people love talking about that. But how about the broken families? How about all of that pain that is now residing in our communities that we possibly could have done something about? And you might say, well, we can't fix all of them. Well, yeah, but if you reach one heart, perhaps you may be reaching the heart that can reach another, that reaches another. We have to believe this. If not, then I have a saying. The saying is, we get what we get. I know that sounds very, kind of cold, but in a way, it's really true. We have a responsibility, I believe, to value the lives of the people that we live in community with. I think we have a responsibility to do that. And that responsibility pays dividends whenever we treat it well and we manage it with love. I believe that we all benefit.
You're talking about something that requires so much dedication and so much energy, so much patience. I think most people say it's just superhuman to kind of invest that much energy where the need is greatest. And so I'm wondering, how do you renew yourself? How do you maintain your energy and your commitment?
I think with rest is a huge part of it. I think there's a reason why we have, Sabbath. I think we all need to rest. I think we need to, the Lord invites us into that space. But I think also I get renewed, of course, through prayer and spending time with God. I really see a lot of the things that we're doing just through the lens of the gospel, and that renews me, because I genuinely do believe, and the stories also renew me, because I get to hear great testimonies of amazing things that are happening in people's lives, and it makes it all worth it. If one person's life is transformed, if one person's life is impacted, positively through anything that we do, I mean, how can that not be worth it? I was that one person, just knowing how I grew up and where I came from, and the fact that the Lord just brought people into my life that poured into me, and became catalysts of hope in my story. How can I neglect, at least trying to be that in someone else's?
Whenever I meet somebody who's so heavily invested as you are, I mean, genuinely kind of lovingly invested in other people's lives, there's always somebody in their past who has really been a loving force in their lives also. And I remember you years ago telling me a bit about that story, the people that invested in you. Could you share that with us?
Sure, there've been a number of people. Even my mom being a single parent, and me growing up the way that I did. I was born in the projects in New York, and my grandmother, my mom, I was raised partially by both, and they both in some ways it was very challenged to raise a young Black man, being a single parent, from my mom, even with my grandmother's help. But there were other people in the community. Like I'll never forget going through a very difficult time when I was in high school, and my mom made one phone call to one of my school teachers. His name was Mr. Nixon, and Mr. Nixon drove all the way from South Carolina to New York to take me out to dinner and check on me, to make sure I was okay. And I'll never forget that, because when he saw me, he didn't even say hi. He just grabbed me and embraced me and said, "Are you okay?" People like Mr. Nixon, people like Reverend Bradley. I can just name so many people, Mr. Stroman. There were so many people that my mom brought into my life, and she allowed them to have access to me to do what she couldn't do. Because I mean, just like a lot of, young Black men, I mean, the streets were calling me too. You hear it, and it's hard, but when you have people in your life, that love you and care for you. I never grew up, even though I grew up with a lot of difficulty in my life, there was not a single day that I wondered whether or not I was loved. My mom made that very clear. But I'm finding so many young people that don't feel loved by anyone. And some of us can't understand, we can't grasp like what that really is like. But there are kids out there that are growing up never having experienced love on any level at any time. And we expect them to behave how?
Yeah.
What do we expect from them?
It's entirely missing from our conversation about what our society needs.
Exactly.
And it's not as if we don't know it. I mean, we know this from psychology. We know it from sociology as well. We know it from looking at a number of cultures that, love is not only the prime motivator in human life. It's also, it provides the foundation for everything that we're able to do later on. And yet I find it remarkable that it's as if we are embarrassed to talk about it openly, about how important it is.
Yes, sir. I totally agree. And, this sense of community is also very important. One thing we want to work on as we build a reentry program in our community is, having, our politicians and our, church leaders and other community leaders, come together and, welcome people that are re-entering the community that are coming from being incarcerated. We want them to feel welcome, to feel like, okay, you did whatever you did and you paid the price for whatever you did. Now, as a community, these are the resources that we have available to you. We welcome you back as a member of community. You matter and you have value and worth here in this community. And by doing so, that's also providing an expectation, that now that you're a part of the community, that you will respond in kind as being a part of the community. So that relationship, it matters. It matters. There's so many people that I deal with. I talk with some guys now that are on house arrest, and they just feel so isolated. They don't feel like they matter. And it's just a very, very difficult time for them. And it's just like, man, how do we get them, back, functioning in the community in a positive, way without, hurting them. You know what I mean? Because many of them, they've been hurt already, so, continuing to push them out and make them feel like outsiders is kind of perpetuating what they already feel about themselves. And so that's the type of stuff that we're working on right now, finding ways to do that, finding ways also to help them become resources in the community. We want to empower them and let them know that, hey, you just survived something, you went through something. Guess what? Your story matters. Now you can help these young men or help these young women. Let's help you become a resource in the community. And so now people are looking up to you. People want to hear your story. And now you can impact and affect change positively in the community, which then adds value. So these are the things that we're working on, with as it pertains to reentry in our community right now.
If I had to design a t-shirt for you, it would say Catalyst for Hope right on the front, because I think that's what you are. Do you feel, despite seeing the challenges in front of us, do you feel hopeful for where we're heading, both, in your community and then, taking it at a macro level?
I really do. Because, there's a book, I can't remember the author, but the name of the book is called Prophetic City. And it's about the city of Houston. And it's a remarkable book written by a professor, I think, from Rice. And so anyway, it's what I'm seeing happening in Houston, I believe is prophetic. I could see it happening in other spaces. I think Houston's a very difficult place for a lot of these sorts of things. Like most people that live outside of Texas, when I tell them about all the unity and all the collaboration that's happening here, they're amazed by it. And, with all of the diversity that's here and different types of diversity, we're not just talking about, multi-ethnic diversity. There's so much diversity that resides here in Houston, but yet in the midst of all of that, there is unity that's just arising. And the conference that I'm at right now is a great example. You have denominations that are coming together saying, how can we help resource one another? How can we be one and operate here in Houston and really not just say, on earth as it is in heaven, but, in Houston as it is in heaven. How can we make that true? And beginning with ourselves, beginning with how we interact with one another, valuing our relationship. Jesus prayed that we would be one as he and the Father are one. How can we have that oneness among ourselves and then allow that to just, pour into our relationship so that they can see what we're modeling, and so that they then can then pour that, liberally to just throughout our community here in Greater Houston. And so we're seeing that happen. So I'm super hopeful. I'm super hopeful. The more the problems, the more the opportunities. And I tell you, our country, we have great opportunities right now. So that's how I see it.
Well, Jervie, you are truly an inspiration. I mean, to do what you did on the cusp of retirement, and to roll up your sleeves and to say that there was a lot more work that needed to be done, and then to go and do it, truly gives me a lot of hope for the future as well. Because if we had a lot of you sprinkled throughout the country, I think we would be on the cusp of taking advantage of all those opportunities, as it were. So I really want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and sharing your ideas and your passion and your hopefulness with us today. It is truly a beautiful thing.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, but I can tell you that the Lord has just really blessed me to have a lot of wonderful and incredible, amazing people that have poured into my life. And, Dr. Rick Hike is one of them. Tom Thibodeau's another one. I mean, I've just come in contact with people that have added so much value to my life. And I believe that a lot of that was preparation for this time. I remember saying when I was on a bus leaving Fort McCoy for training that, man, I would never want to be stationed at Fort McCoy. Like, man, I hate this place. That's how I was while I was leaving, Fort McCoy. I was like, I never want to come back here. And it was like maybe a year later, I ended up with military orders to Fort McCoy, and it ended up becoming my longest duty station that I've ever stayed anywhere. So God knows what he's doing. And it changed my life. When I came to Fort McCoy, I had a lot of stuff going on, a lot of, challenges happening in my family and in my life. And it just became just a very, very hopeful place for me. The campus of Viterbo. I mean, the books that I read, the times that I got to sit down with professors that really cared about me, it restored me. And so I'm not trying to give a Viterbo commercial, but I love that school, and it will always have a special place in my heart because of what I believe God did in me while I was there. So again, I'm just a product of a lot of different things, and I hope to be able to be that in someone else's life.
Well, it's obvious you are carrying that example forward, and thank you so much for that.
Thank you.